Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help promote the channel more. If you enjoy listening to the following story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. Please get a P.O. box. This awesome story is written by MTP6921, a wonderful author over on Reddit's NoSleep subreddit. My dad was in a physical rehabilitation centre for a stroke he had 2 weeks ago. My dad and I decided that it would be best that he sells the building where he had a business of fixing old electronics. He would fix everything from old VCRs to old camcorders. My dad lived upstairs from the business. My dad was very adamant about no one touching any of the old equipment downstairs that he had in the showroom or in the back rooms where he made the repairs. Based on the amount of old electronics that my dad has, he would be considered a hoarder. With the advent of eBay, my dad's business had struggled for years. I knew my dad couldn't live in the building anymore. There were too many steps and it was just too cluttered. So before allowing the bank to take it over, I was going to see if there was any vintage electronics that were worth selling online, and the rest I would just donate. I had to hurry to avoid my dad going into foreclosure. The majority of the vintage electronics were worthless from doing online research. My dad had several vintage Zenith woodgrain VHS players that had considerable value, so I decided that I was going to put them on eBay. But first I needed to test them to make sure they worked. I looked endlessly through his desks and closets to find a VHS tape to test the players. Finally, I found a tape hidden in one of the back closets. I put the tape into the player and was shocked at what I saw. Someone videotaped themselves walking through other people's houses with a dim-lit flashlight. The person was peeking into sleeping people's rooms and briefly videotaping them. Even though nobody was being harmed, the footage was extremely disturbing. There were multiple homes the intruder went into, and there was no footage of people being harmed or items being stolen. Just dark, grainy videos of adults and kids sleeping. I couldn't tell who took the photos or whose houses were being broken into. I thought about calling my boyfriend for help, but I didn't want him to report my father to the police, if of course the videos were taken by my father. My father would literally have a heart attack if he knew I was going through his stuff, so I decided not to ask him about the videotape. I decided to watch the video closely to see if there were any clues as to whose houses were being videotaped. I was able to make out an envelope being held onto with a magnet on the refrigerator. It was difficult to make out the writing, but after analysing it for several hours, I was able to make out the return address. I googled the address and determined the address to be about 2 hours away in Maryland. I did online research on the address and discovered the person had an eBay store where they sold vintage electronics. It didn't take me long to figure it was probably my father going through these people's houses. I didn't know for sure, but he probably had a vendetta out on them for ruining his business. This was out of character for my father, and I felt like one of those naive family members on one of those crime shows that says, "I had no idea he was capable of doing something like that." I only know what I saw on the videotapes, which are very serious crime times about 5 different houses. I really don't know if anyone was harmed or if anything was stolen. I knew I had to confront my dad. and I decided to do it the next day at the rehab centre. However, I got a call in the middle of the night from the rehab centre saying my dad was transferred to the ICU and he was in a bad shape. When I arrived to the ICU, I learned that my father was bleeding internally and he had a poor prognosis. I was told he probably wouldn't make it through the night. He was very weak and he could only point and shake his head yes or no. After telling him how much I loved him, I asked him about the tape. I asked him if he was a person who videotaped the home intrusions, and he shook his head no. I told him I didn't know any of the people on the tape. Then he held up 2 fingers and pointed towards me. Then he fell asleep and never really woke up again. I felt regret for asking him those questions on his deathbed, and I felt confused as to why he put 2 fingers up and pointed towards me. I now felt more comfortable going to the police, so I showed them the video. They were horrified at what they saw and asked permission to search my father's business. I was even more surprised to learn the police found a second videotape similar to the other one, but with different people and different houses. The police asked me to come down to the station to view the second videotape. My stomach recoiled from what I observed on the tape. Right away, I knew the one segment was the inside of my house. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I was videotaped for close to a minute, sleeping. The video was dark and grainy, and it was like someone was flashing a flashlight with dying batteries at me. I had no idea someone was in my house. I never woke up when that person was in my house. I suspect the person used a butter knife or some other type of slim object to get through my basement door. I immediately paid someone to install a deadbolt on that same basement door. Also, I now knew why my father put up 2 fingers and pointed at me, meaning there was a second videotape of me. And why didn't he tell me about it? I asked my boyfriend to move in with me while the police were trying to find the person who broke into the houses. The police were perplexed by how my father had possession of the videotapes. The police made my father their #1 suspect, but I knew it wasn't him. I decided to do my own investigation. I didn't want my father to be blamed for something he didn't do, and I didn't want these videotaped people suing his estate. My father had passed away, and I didn't want him to turn into an internet meme. I had made a copy of the first videotape. One of the things that stood out in the tape was that there was a time and date recording as the video played. Now I knew the date was wrong because it had a 1957 date on it. I looked up countless hours of VHS home videos on YouTube, and I found one strikingly similar to the same time and date format. It was a vintage Panasonic AG460 model camcorder. What struck me about the camcorder was that my father had asked me to purchase a part for him on eBay for the same model. My father didn't use credit cards and he wasn't computer savvy, so occasionally he would ask me to buy things for him online. I went into my eBay account and found the address where the part from the camcorder was shipped from. It was a Delaware address that was about an hour and a half from my house. I researched the address and discovered the house, and the owner of the house was shocked to find out the guy was killed in an apparent arson. At this point I really didn't know what to think. I sat on this information for a few days. The police had called me and said that they were able to identify another one of the houses that were broken into and filmed. This time the police had a partial image of the intruder from a neighbour's outdoor camera surveillance. The image was only a partial image, but I was able to see enough to deduce that the person who broke into all these people's houses, including mine, was the guy who was killed in the arson fire in Delaware. I was also convinced that my father was responsible for that man's death. My father had broken into that man's house, then got the videotapes and either killed him first or just burnt his house down. I didn't share any of this information with the police. I told the police I didn't know the man on the video surveillance, but it was clearly not my father and most likely the guy who died in Delaware. A year later, everything was back to normal. My boyfriend and I were opening Christmas gifts, and I opened a gift that I thought my relatives in Florida had sent me. But it wasn't from them. Instead, it was a vintage RCA camcorder with a tape in it. I started crying in fear. My boyfriend said, "What the fuck?" We connected the camcorder to our TV, and it was videos of my boyfriend and I carrying out everyday tasks like walking to the store that somebody had secretly videotaped. I started crying hysterically when I watched the videotape. Every time I leave the house, I have to do a 360-degree look around to make sure no one else is videotaping me. I never feel safe, and I wear sunglasses wherever I go. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you'd like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. Have you written a creepypasta story you would like me to narrate? Have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters, or even had a creepy or terrifying situation you would like to share? Well, I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit your stories. The link for that is also in the thumbnail as well as below in the description. You can submit your stories there, or you can send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. Now I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit and Discord. And if you'd like to support the channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. And any and all donations would be gratefully received. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.